Making the Grade with our weekly look at education in Idaho. And of course, tonight it's all about the new top educator in the state.
So I sit down with Idaho Education News reporter Kevin Richard to get his take on the election. Kevin's back for this election edition of Making the Grade. Can we get out the brooms? It was a sweep for the Republicans. But let's start with state superintendent race. This one has been contentious all along. Polls showed it close. Some people thought it's not going to be that close. It was.
It was really close, and it went down to the wire, clear into Wednesday morning. Sherry Ibarra won by 5,700 votes. Actually, the gap was narrowing as the night went on. It was going back and forth. Really kind of a surprising win for a lot of reasons. I mean, Sherry Ibarra was underfunded. She was a first-time candidate. We've talked about a lot of the missteps along the way in this campaign. It does speak to the fact that on the statewide level and to a degree, obviously, on the national level, this was a big year for Republicans, and I think a lot of that factored into what you saw last night.
Have you had the ability to talk to Jana Jones yet?
No, we haven't, and I don't know if anybody has talked to her at this point. I've got to think a really disappointing loss for her and for Democrats, because Jones had run this race 8 years ago. She had run a close race with Tom Luna, came closer this time around, but really when you think about it, running against a candidate who'd never run for statewide office before in Sherry Ibarra, having an advantage, a big advantage in fundraising, and running a fairly smooth campaign as Jones did, all of the stars seem to be aligned for the Democrats to pull this one race out. So for them to lose this one, I think is going to be a bitter pill.
You were talking about this when you were writing about it for Idaho Education News, saying that you thought this loss by Jana Jones compared to her 2006 loss to Tom Luna, this one would actually sting more. Those reasons?
I've got to think so. For all of those reasons, and for the fact that, you know, Tom Luna in 2006 when he won had the experience of running for statewide office, and that helps a candidate going into a statewide race. You've got name ID, you've got a sense of what it takes to run a race. Well, that was one of the advantages that Jana Jones had going into this race because she had run before. So to lose, and to lose narrowly to a first-time candidate, yeah, it's got to be disappointing.
Let's talk a little bit about the governor's race, because when it comes to education, A.J. Belukoff, sitting member on the Boise School Board, education was his focus, up against Governor Otter, who's had issues with propositions not passing years ago. Is this a referendum on education when it comes to the top job in the state?
Well, what I think it is a referendum on the referenda from 2 years ago. I think what it shows is that the vote that we saw on Propositions 1, 2, and 3, the overwhelming defeat of those propositions, really feels like it was a one-off, a one-shot deal, as opposed to a change in the way politics is conducted in the state, a change in the way voters behave. I mean, let's face it, Butch Otter was a vocal advocate of the propositions. He signed them into law. And throughout this campaign, even after voters had rejected the propositions, he had said repeatedly, I think the product was good, but the process was bad. Break that down. He was basically telling voters, I think you got it wrong on the product. But he still won, and he won fairly handily.
Yes,
and
he did.
You know, 53%. He did better last night than he did in the primary 6 months ago. So it's a very interesting result as far as that goes, and very interesting with implications for education.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, going forward into the future, and I know, Kevin, you don't have a crystal ball that can tell us what's going to happen come the legislature in January, but where does education stand with some of these top seats?
Well, what I think it sets the stage for, among other things, is a potentially really bitter and protracted battle over this tiered teacher licensure issue. Butch Otter has said he likes the idea. Sherry Ibarra has said it's a good start, it's a step in the right direction. She is kind of inching her way closer to supporting this. Now, you know, a lot of teachers are vocally opposed to this. We've had the hearings across the state. The Idaho Education Association has really come out strongly against this. So you have the potential next year, when this comes before the legislature, to have a very heated argument, very heated debate over it.
We will be here, obviously, to cover it for you. If you'd like to read much more about the election coverage from Idaho Education News, you can just go to their website, idahoednews.org. Kevin, appreciate all your insights. Thanks for being here late with us last night and again today. Appreciate that very much. Making the Grade.